They say you could only be a jack of all trades. How about a master of all trades? That is who we're talking to today and what he can do. Chris Lincoln is with us. He is a seasoned producer, director in sports media, has worked on just about every single network. He also has his own production company, which we're going to talk about, Flying Fish Productions, and that is found online at flyingfishproductions.tv. He is a very much accomplished man in this business. So we're going to highlight him on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, also a tennis, volleyball, beach volleyball broadcaster. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this, looking not just at the personal accolades of Chris, but also learn more about his backstory and what he's all about. So, Chris, first of all, I'm so grateful for a couple minutes of your time here to tell your story in a neat way. I know when it comes to events, as I start out here, that you've worked on, that you've produced, Ironman is one of the main events that you've been a part of. How would you assimilate your career, your trajectory to being your own Ironman in a way?
That's well said. Yeah, a bit of it is Survivor. I
Yes.
will add another show into that. You start out and get in this industry and you work your way up from the bottom, as so many of us have done. And then you decide maybe to go on your own and try some things. And then things get thrown at you, changes in media structure, deals, networks losing rights to something that was passionate in your world. Bosses getting fired, people that made decisions moving on to other companies. And you just try to keep everything, all the balls in the air so you can keep working. So I call it Survivor.
Survivor has allowed you to have that staying power in the business. You look at your career, and versatility seems to be the forefront theme of your career and what you're able to do. A lot of what you're doing now is a lot of individual sports competitions. In a way, what has allowed you to gravitate into that realm?
Well, again, I think we talked a little bit earlier. I got into the packaging side of the sports 20 some odd years ago. Starting with the Outdoor Lacrosse League, and that was brand new, and got involved with Fox early on and producing those out of small facilities. And you work your way up through, okay, we can do this. And, to be honest, at the end of the day, it's surrounding yourself with a team of people that are all kind of in the freelance world and all passionate what they do. And there's a saying I always use that you're only as good as your last show, but you also, for that reason, you got to keep putting out the effort. And so things have evolved, things have changed quite a bit. You pick up more ability to do things by being around it for, years and years and years. And that's the technical side, something that I never thought I would get involved with. But now I'm more in the technical producing side and using all those skill sets because things have changed. Technology has changed so much, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, but also over the last 20 years. And the fact that we can do small, shows that are big yet with smaller amount of people and smaller technical things. So you kind of got to know it all. You got to, to be able to package it, you got to understand how important these other divisions are and these other pieces.
You got to know it all, and you have to be with the times. As you said, there's a lot of evolution that comes with having this vitality, this long lifespan in the business. And you mentioned learning. What kind of learner is Chris Lincoln?
Good question. One that constantly is listening, reading. I read a lot. I work a lot reading with SVG about what other people are doing. I attend seminars that bring stuff up at NAB and with SVG, and you just kind of, you have to align yourself. Like I said, I'm not the guy that's going to plug in the camera, but I'm the guy who understands how long it takes to plug in the camera and how important those jobs are. And so I think at the end of the day, you put together a team with people that are good at what they do and everybody comes together, and that's the best part. So back to learning, it's knowing that it's not just the announcer, it's not just the game, it's not just the producer or the director. It is absolutely every single body that takes to put on a show.
To put on a show, as you said, you need a team. How about the team as in your family? How much similarities do you see in the way you orchestrate your position in the working world as someone who oversees and has to keep an eye on all sorts of different things to you in your family life and what that's like?
Well, my kids are all adults now, but they could probably say that their dad was organized, but also a bit of a micromanager, you know. There's a lot of similarities to, running a family or running, a business. And again, it's a team, right? Time to take out the trash, time to, do X, Y, and Z chores. It's the same thing with a broadcast, that you have a limited time to walk into a venue and get everything set up and you got to hit on air at the right time,
If I were to talk to a kid of yours and say, where does your dad get all of his fire, his passion, and his drive? What would they tell me?
Well, sports fan first, first and foremost. You know, I, I think they would understand the travel side of it is fun, has been or it was. Um, and I think that at the end of the day, it's an accomplishment. There's something about doing something live that, mistakes happen, you move on quickly, you learn all these things, and then you look back when it's done, moments, and there's always a high five or a good feeling most of the time. And again, that, I did a show a couple nights ago and I literally went to overtime, and it was enthralling to a point where the fans were going crazy. It was a big comeback by the home team. So I just remember lying in bed going, I don't think I'm going to sleep right away. And this was just 3 nights ago. It was Friday night, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah, there's passion there. It's exciting.
Your background is so diverse with Fox and Golf Channel, and the list goes on. What was the highest personal athletic achievement that you ever had growing up?
I mean, as an
You,
athlete,
yeah.
um, I swam a couple years in college, and last years of high school into college, I was, relatively nationally ranked in a couple of events in swimming. So I was a college swimmer at UC Santa Barbara, and as an athlete, that was probably my pinnacle.
There have been so many pinnacles, multiple pinnacles in your career when you look at what you've done. Chris Lincoln is with us, producer, director, you name it. He's done it all in sports media. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. What has been a look back at a usage of strength internally from you that's helped you get through a tough time in the business? Or you could look at it now and say a learning period specifically, or a bump in the road that you took and you learned and you're better off because of it.
There's been many. It's not an easy business. It's a who you know business first and foremost. I don't think anybody on your side of it or my side of it would ever disagree with that. And again, there's things that are outside your control. But the learning side of it, from a negative, I've had, bosses, like I said, lose their job. And then with that, a new boss comes in, brings his own people in. And what do you learn from that? You learn, a lot of adversity, but you also learn that I'm going to stick with that person, like other opportunities came up, even though that person was fired from a network that I worked a lot under. He then moved on to another position that opened up some new opportunities that were probably at the time better than what I had before. So you kind of have to be thick-skinned, but at the same time, you have to understand that there's not it's not going to be an easy road. I mean, I know a lot of these top producers in the country, and everybody's had ups and downs. And so your time comes and goes. It's like a lot of times I think on a medium, where do I stand? Am I on the losing side of where I have friends that, colleagues that are producing Super Bowls. I'm not doing Super Bowls, but I like what I do. I like the side of the niche sports I get to do. So you weigh it, say, well, he put all this effort into, and now he's the Super Bowl producer. Or, Fred Godelli, for instance, I worked under for a lot of years at ESPN. He had a different path. My path took me to wherever I am now. And that's another way to look at it, is just be present with where we are and what you're doing and keep the passion going.
How long has it taken, Chris, to come to that philosophical understanding that you appreciate what you've done and that doesn't get in the way of the constant striving of something that you might not have?
Good point. I think it's an ongoing thing. It's a mentality you have to have, and a thoughtful, mindfulness about where we are right now. Everybody's health. I mean, we look at a war in Ukraine and say, oh my gosh, I'm this big. And sports production, even though it may be a good haven for, watching the NCAA tournament over the weekend to get your mind off of war or something, we're this big, right? And so that's a mindfulness, for me to think, I get to do this for a living. We laugh, a lot of us. And now that we're all back, there was a year and a half where we weren't in trucks and we weren't traveling as much and we weren't doing stuff. And now that we've all been back, a lot of us this winter, we're saying, in this great, boy, we're lucky. We're so lucky what we get to do. So, there's an appreciation. And I think your question was like, when did you come to, think that through? Clearly not in my 20s, probably later in my 30s, when I had a family and opportunities were coming and going. Yeah, I mean, those opportunities, they don't come without hard work, but if you have that mentality and that mindfulness that, where we are right now is where we should be, then it all is gravy. It's not that hard.
One of the places that you have been was working in sailing and putting on productions as such. Such a fascinating sport, I would think, to try and put on television, and how you can probably really get creative with setting up different cameras and everything. When you go back to those most recent sailing broadcasts, if I'm living in your head, how am I setting this thing up?
It's technical. It's way beyond production. It's expensive because it's technical. Costs have come down in wireless stuff, but when I first got involved with it, sailing at America's Cup level, and then the Olympic level, Olympic Games, it's a huge budget with a lot of RF wireless equipment, helicopters, boats on the water, chasing after the racing, getting ahead of the racing without putting a wake in the water. All these things become a factor. And as a producer or, in charge of production, say at the Olympics, there's a lot of things at risk. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. But it brought me to a level of understanding of the technical side on wireless cameras. We're 18 wireless cameras, onboard cameras. And again, I'm going back into, well over 10 years ago. Things are evolving now and have been evolving. And that's kind of the niche I'm in is, how do we do this sport of triathlon? How do we do this sport of road cycling or cyclocross or marathon runs and things that are wireless? And how do we do it better? Or how do we do it, to save money, and get more cameras, because the wireless connectivity, say, as a technology has come down in price. So there's, back to the question, is like sailing kind of opened up my eyes to a lot of technical producing and having the right people around you, again, with the right equipment.
If there was equipment and cameras covering you practicing and you swimming in college and watching the work and the toil that you would put in to get yourself competition ready, what would I be seeing?
Stuff that you see with Michael Phelps, a lot of underwater stuff, because so much happens with athletic prowess of what you do with on top of the water, but really all your stroke and kicking underwater and your turns. I mean, half the race today, the way these kids run, swim a race, is most of it's underwater. So yeah, if you're talking about how you technically cover it, that's how you would do it.
And then you personally, what was your life like back then when here you are, you're in college, you're figuring out what you want to do from even a non-technical broadcast perspective? What would I meet if I saw you and maybe we had a class together?
Yeah.
What would you have been like back then?
Wet hair, tired, disciplined, trying to time manage. That's actually a big one. Time management as a swimmer, like a gymnast or other sports that take a lot of training, a lot of hours, is a big part of, I think, success into having your own business and getting into travel and back timing shows and getting on the air on the right time. It's all about time management, right? How do you produce the best last 10 minutes of a game when the game ends, or the first 5 minutes before you face off, or tip off? What's the storytelling entity there? And it's all time. Everything's about time. So same thing with swimming. I still swim, and I'm a big clock watcher. I flip a turn, come off, and I look, okay, that 100 was, 112, or 108. And, it's all kind of connected, statistics, everything's kind of connected from what you learn as an athlete and as an age group swimmer about time. It all kind of connects to what sports is about, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, how much do you go by the clock in your discipline in that, outside of sports, outside of broadcast, in that you're very regimented in how you set up each one of your days?
It's easy for me, I guess, if that's an answer, because of all that, background as an athlete and as a, just doing this business for so long. It's about time management.
Where does your joy come from in this business? Obviously, the background in being a sports fan, but the way in which you keep, Chris, an optimistic perspective and all the relationships and all the things that you've covered. At times, this business, like you said, it can kind of spit you out in a way, and people can become jaded. But what I see here from you is this positivity, this belief in yourself, a self-appreciation, and also an unselfishness about you. How did you find a way mentally to come to all of this, even when you've got a business that is so competitive and so cutthroat?
Well, I think there's two answers there. I think the first one, from what you're touching on, is survival again.
Yeah.
Is going back to the fact that I enjoy this. I think I'm okay at this. I'm pretty good at this, and aligning yourself with the people that believe in you, having a family that supports you, all that. And then I think as you get older, my new passion is, a lot of it is with working with younger people. So CBS Sports, for instance, with basketball, I'm sometimes the senior guy in the truck. And when I look at the clock and I'm back timing what we're going to do in the last hour before we go live, I'm making a list sometimes of what is important and what's not, because I know we may not get to everything. Or, I'm working with younger producers and allowing them to not make mistakes, but I'm also helping them get through, some of this stuff. So that's been fun. I work on another couple projects with younger people, and I'm constantly just, I think through osmosis, trying to teach them, some of the skill set that it takes and mindset it takes to get through, like you said, some of the hardships.
What level of self-meaning do you get when you are on those production trucks and you're helping those come up in the business?
Well, a lot of it's done in a short day or a weekend or something. So you don't really, maybe over dinner, you'll have that conversation. I do that a lot too, where I'll spend time with a young graphics coordinator who's maybe a year or two out of college and tell them, I went through this. I did it a couple nights ago on a show where I pulled a young producer aside and I said, don't get frustrated over X, Y, and Z. Here's what I've gone through. And he was like, I really appreciate you, telling me that, so yeah, I mean, I say osmosis only because I don't really think through, I don't really think through the fact, oh, I got to do this to make this guy better or make this gal better, this person better. It's more just, I think it's part of the being the veteran guy, and it's just part of what I want to do. I want to mentor people.
You're doing great work in that, and I'm so glad that we discussed this on the podcast. My final question, Chris Lincoln is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. What is your way, Chris, of relaxing, unplugging from the gung-ho, always on lifestyle of you, the director, the producer extraordinaire?
Yeah, I still lean towards getting a good sweat out, a good workout. If I'm not feeling up to it, I'll just go for a walk. But I try to get outdoors, try to get in the gym or in a pool or go skiing or do something almost 5-6 days a week. And that keeps me going, to be honest. That's how I unplug. That, a good book, a Netflix series, something that's, along the lines of Drive to Survive or something like that with Formula One, stuff like that. That's fun to just kind of get your mind off of what you're doing.
If I may, what comes across your mind when you're going on those walks?
Family. I try not to get ahead of myself. I try to be present. That's a hard one sometimes. This business will keep you on your toes of like deadlines and what you want to do, self-imposed deadlines, production deadlines, date, a flight. Sometimes you don't sleep well the night before an early flight because you don't think you're going to get up on time. Well, that never has happened. So you should be able to sleep through the night. You know what I mean?
So when it's family, is it, how do I find enough time to be with them with all these other responsibilities? Or what about your family resonates most with you when you have those walks, when you're able to reflect a little bit?
Yeah, just the time, how short the time is with people. I lost my mom to COVID a year and a half ago, and there isn't a day where I don't think, oh, I better call. Oh, I can't call mom. And the times that she lived in California, and for many years, you see her once or twice a year, and you just think back on those times and say it was never enough. So I think about that type of stuff.
How do you think about her when you're working in the truck, on a broadcast?
I really don't. I don't. I'm too focused. I don't. Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't have time to think beyond what is really present right there in front of me.
And she would be so proud of you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Chris Lincoln, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for your openness, your transparency, and telling a little bit more about your life outside of work, in work. You continue to be such a guiding light, a North Star in this business, and I want people to see that. And that's why I wanted to have you on. Chris Lincoln, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thank you again, Chris, for making the time.
Thank you, Bryan. Appreciate it. It's fun.